The final audio log from the flagship of the Vorlag Empire, recovered from the black box after what historians would later refer to simply as the incident, contains only a single fragment. It's not the sound of weapons fire, nor the sound of screams. It is the panicked, desperate voice of General Reth, a warrior who had survived 1,000 battles across 100 worlds. "My lord, stop! I implore you, Lord Malakor, do not answer their greeting. It's a trap. It's not an invitation. It's a test." The recording ends there. So I ask you this. What do you do when the most powerful enemy in the universe doesn't want to fight you, but talk to you? What do you do when the conqueror of galaxies, Lord Malakor, makes a mistake far worse than declaring war? The mistake of thinking he understood his opponent. This story doesn't begin with an explosion. It begins with a fatal misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that was about to teach the entire galaxy that some doors are best left unopened. And the door to Earth, as it turned out, had a very tricky handle. For Kian, the war had already begun. It was not a war of starships and laser fire, but a silent, brutal conflict waged in the living room of his small Prague apartment. His enemy was Legion, laid out before him on the floor like the casualties of a failed invasion. Pale wood planks, a baffling assortment of screws, and a small plastic bag of wooden dowels that felt suspiciously light. His foe was the bureaucracy bookshelf. His weapon was a flimsy hex key. His only map was a single sheet of paper depicting a series of pictograms, featuring a smug, smiling cartoon man who seemed to mock Kian's suffering with his effortless competence. "It says insert peg A into slot B," Kian hissed, holding a dowel between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a venomous insect. He gestured wildly at the plank of wood. "But there is no slot B. There was never a slot B. Look at it. It's a smooth, unblemished plane of particle board. Are you hiding slot B, you monster? Is this a trick?" The bookshelf did not reply. The smiling man on the instructions maintained his infuriating grin. Kian was on the verge of declaring a full tactical retreat when his tablet chimed with an incoming Priority 1 call. The severe official seal of the Earth Diplomatic Corps filled the screen. He answered it with a guttural growl. "What?" "Kian, we need you," came the calm, collected voice of Secretary of Diplomacy Anya Sharma. "Is it about the red stapler again?" Kian snapped, his focus still locked on the perfidious bookshelf. "Because I already told HR it's my emotional support stapler, and they can have it when they pry it from my cold, dead hands. It has a pleasing heft. It staples with authority. It's bigger than the stapler, Kian. An alien empire wants a duel to the death to determine the fate of humanity." Kian paused. He looked at the defiant bookshelf. He looked at the instruction manual, which seemed to be laughing at him now. On one hand, a hopeless, sanity-draining battle against impossible geometry and the lies of Swedish design philosophy. On the other, a simple duel to the death with an alien. The choice was surprisingly easy. "Fine," he sighed, dropping the dowel in defeat. It rolled under the couch, lost forever. "But this counts as my personal development day, and I am expensing the shuttle's Wi-Fi." I'm in the middle of a very heated argument on the Home Handyman forum about the optimal torque settings for drywall anchors, and I think I'm about to break a user named Bob Villafan82. Aboard the flagship, The Inevitable, the mood was one of triumphant corporate synergy. The bridge was a masterpiece of brutalist obsidian and polished chrome, less a war room and more a futuristic, high-stakes boardroom. Lord Malakor stood at its center, reviewing the Q3 projections for his galactic conquest. The Xylar acquisition was a complete success, he announced to his assembled generals, who were more like vice presidents of various hostile departments. Their defensive assets have been liquidated, and their resources have been absorbed into the Vorlag portfolio. "We are on track for record growth this cycle." He brought up a new image on the main screen, a tranquil blue-green marble. "Earth, our next target for aggressive restructuring is humanity," he continued. "Market analysis indicates they are an over-leveraged asset with an inflated reputation based entirely on anecdotal evidence. We will challenge them, they will fail, and we will consolidate their market share." General Reth, the only one on the bridge who still thought in terms of tactics instead of terminology, stepped forward. "My lord, I have reviewed their initial filings as you requested. Their diplomatic communiques are perplexing." "Perplexing how, Reth?" Malakor asked, sounding bored. They have footnotes, Reth said, his voice grave. Some of those footnotes have their own footnotes, citing appendices that don't seem to exist. Their entire legal framework appears to be a recursive loop of self-referential clauses. I have had 3 of our best legal analysts resign in tears. One of them has taken up pottery, Malakor scoffed. Reth, that is what they want us to think. It's a classic negotiation tactic. Obfuscation. We will cut through their red tape with a plasma torch. Set a course. He's a menace. General Armstrong, head of Earth's military, slammed a fist on the polished table of the Situation Room. Anya, with all due respect, you want to send a man who tried to file an injunction against the moon for excessive nocturnal light pollution to face the Vorlag? Anya Sharma took a slow sip of her coffee, unperturbed. That is precisely why he is the perfect choice, General. The Vorlag are a sledgehammer. You cannot stop a sledgehammer by being a stronger wall. You stop it by being a pile of gelatin. You make the problem weird. She brought up a file on the main screen. This is what Kian does. He makes things weird. Remember the Glarzen incident 2 years ago? They threatened us with a planet-killing singularity bomb. Armstrong grunted. I remember. We were preparing for a full-scale assault. And we would have lost, Anya said calmly. But Kian discovered the Glarzon hadn't filed the correct interstellar environmental impact forms for their doomsday device. He also found a loophole in their species Public Communications Act. He rerouted their entire civilization's junk mail, every ad for Tentacle moisturizer, and pre-approved credit shit directly to the bomb's trigger address. Their inbox server crashed the entire system before they could launch. They recalled their fleet and sent us a formal apology for the spam. The room was silent. The Vorlag won a glorious battle, Anya concluded. We are activating the puffed-up hedgehog protocol. We will not give them a warrior. We will give them an auditor. The journey to the Vorlag fleet was, for the shuttle's pilot, Captain Eva Rostova, a descent into a private hell. She was a decorated officer, a veteran of asteroid field navigation and solar flare evasion. She was not trained for this. Brenda, are you even listening to me? Kian said, his voice rising in passion. He was on a video call, glaring at a beleaguered-looking customer service representative half a galaxy away. I'm not asking for a refund. I am asking for an acknowledgement that your product, the Canorama 5000, is a monument to failed engineering. The gear mechanism has a tolerance of a wet noodle. The blade is as sharp as a spoon. I have a can of beans here, Brenda, a perfectly innocent can of beans that may now never know the freedom of being opened. Sir, Captain Rostova said through gritted teeth from the cockpit, we are approaching the Vorlag fleet. I need to brief you on the final approach protocols. Hold on, Captain. I'm achieving a breakthrough, Kian said, holding up a finger. Brenda, I want to speak to your supervisor. No, I will not be put on hold. I have the entire journey to discuss the fundamental flaws in your company's quality assurance pipeline. Rostova sighed and engaged the autopilot. The fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of a man currently waging a one-man war over a faulty kitchen utensil. She quietly updated her will. When Kian finally ended his call, with a written promise of a full corporate apology from Brenda's supervisor, the shuttle had docked. He stepped into the Vorlag arena. It was exactly as loud and obnoxious as he had imagined. A colossal cauldron of black metal, it roared with the sound of a species that had clearly never been told to use their indoor voice. In the center, their champion, Malakor, a mountain of muscle and jagged armor, was warming up by wrestling a captured asteroid into submission with his bare hands. He lifted the multi-ton rock over his head and shattered it, sending fragments pinging off the arena's energy shield. The crowd went insane. Kian was monumentally unimpressed. He walked out to the center of the arena floor, pulling out his tablet. He cleared his throat. Excuse me, he called out. Yes, you, the large individual engaging in unlicensed geological restructuring. Record turned, flexing his enormous biceps, a predator ready to pounce. I'm going to have to write you up, Kian said, tapping on his tablet. First, as I'm sure you're aware, you are in direct violation of Galactic Ordinance 74C, paragraph 3, excessive noise pollution in a designated diplomatic zone. That's a primary infraction. He looked Malakor up and down. Second, that armor. It's clearly custom, which means it hasn't passed standard safety certification. Those shoulder pauldrons are a definite snag hazard, and they lack the appropriate high-visibility reflective markings required by subsection 9. I'm afraid I can't let this duel proceed until you've filed the correct risk assessment forms. In triplicate, he looked up expectantly. Do you have the forms? Rakor's powerful warrior brain, a magnificent organ honed for millennia to process tactics, trajectory, and weak points, tried to parse the concepts of triplicate and snag hazard. It failed. A blue screen of death appeared in his mind's eye. There is a rage born of battle, and there is a rage born of honor. But the most powerful rage of all is the one born of pure bureaucratic frustration. With a roar that bypassed his higher brain functions entirely, Rakor charged. Kian watched him come, a look of mild annoyance on his face. Oh, for goodness sake, he muttered. He reached into the pocket of his transit suit, the same pocket that held 3 different kinds of charging cables and a slightly sticky mint. He pulled out a single, almost invisible ball bearing he'd salvaged from the disastrous Bjork-Noss bookshelf project, and with a practiced flick of his wrist, tossed it onto the polished metal floor directly in Rakor's path. The boot, a masterpiece of kinetic absorption and ablative plating, met the ball bearing, a triumph of spherical perfection, costing approximately 0.03 credits. For a nanosecond, physics held a committee meeting. Rakor's left foot, traveling at immense velocity, suddenly found itself on a surface with a friction coefficient of nearly 0. It shot forward. His body's advanced gyroscopic stabilizers, detecting a sudden, unexpected change in momentum, tried to compensate by shifting his entire mass backward. His other leg, still planted firmly, became an unwilling pivot point. The result was a pinwheel of incandescent fury. The mighty Rakor was launched into a spectacular, involuntary pirouette. He completed 1.5 full rotations before his armor's internal AI, now thoroughly panicked, made a fatal decision. Detecting a catastrophic, multi-axis impact imminent, it initiated the only protocol it had left, emergency full-body lockdown. Rakor's entire suit seized up, every joint locking into place with a series of loud, expensive-sounding clicks. He was instantly frozen mid-spin, a statue of a ballerina in the throes of a terrible mistake. He hung there for a glorious, silent moment before gravity, the universe's ultimate auditor, submitted its final report. Rakor crashed to the floor with a sound like a recycling plant falling down a flight of stairs. He lay there, motionless, a heap of useless, high-tech scrap. A small service light on his chest began to blink with a simple, humiliating message in his native tongue. Reboot required. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Kian walked over, nudged the armor with his shoe, and sighed the deep, weary sigh of every IT support technician in history. Amateur. The aftermath was a logistical nightmare. The Vorlag's finest engineers couldn't reboot Rakor's armor. It required an admin password. Rakor, who was conscious, furious, and extremely claustrophobic inside, knew the password, but the suit's internal microphone was disabled during lockdown. They couldn't get it from him. After 3 hours, a junior technician found the armor's user manual, a 900-page PDF, and discovered the only way to perform a hard reset was to log into the manufacturer's public support forum and submit a service ticket. In the sterile medical bay, General Reth watched 2 engineers get into a heated argument with a user named XX Hex Keymaster Lash XX about whether a hard reset would void the warranty. He felt a profound sense of cosmic dread. He later sat by Rakor's diagnostics lab. The champion was free of his armor now, but a deeper prison had taken its place. It wasn't a fight, Rakor whispered, staring at the ceiling. It was an audit. He didn't see a warrior. He saw a safety violation. Reth nodded slowly. I have been thinking about what you said. About the gardener. I believe you are correct. But we are not the weeds. Rakor looked at him. We, Reth said, his voice heavy, are the poorly assembled piece of outdoor furniture the gardener is about to return to the store for a full refund. Lord Malakor's rage had finally curdled into a cold, dangerous fury. He appeared on Anya Sharma's screen, his face a thundercloud. This mockery ends now, he bellowed. Your auditor has humiliated my greatest champion. Explain the meaning of this, or I will unleash a force of destruction that will require no paperwork whatsoever. Anya Sharma took a slow, deliberate sip of her coffee. It was a dark, bitter roast, just the way she liked it. Meaning? She said, placing the mug down. Oh, there's no grand cosmic meaning, my lord. It's actually very simple. She leaned forward, her expression turning from weary manager to something far more dangerous. You threatened us with war. You have no idea what a war with us would actually look like. I have conquered 1,000 worlds. I know war better than anyone. No one, Anya said, shaking her head. You know fighting. That's different. A war with humanity wouldn't be fought with ships. It would be fought with lawyers. We would sue your empire into bankruptcy. We would bury your command structure in so many appeals, injunctions, and motions to dismiss that your generals would die of old age before the first shot was fired. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You didn't challenge a species of soldiers, my lord. You challenged a species of homeowners associations. A species that will start a multi-generational blood feud because a neighbor's hedge is 2 inches over the property line. A species that will learn an entire legal code just to win an argument online about a movie they didn't even like. You cannot win against that kind of power. It's fiscally and spiritually irresponsible to even try. The Vorlag surrender was swift, unconditional, and drenched in existential terror. A formal ceremony was arranged. A trembling Vorlag ambassador, flanked by a silent General Reth, stood before Kian. He presented Malakor's own immense energy sword, a priceless artifact that had shattered moons. Human Kian, the ambassador said, his voice cracking as he bowed low. We submit, the Vorlag Empire is yours. Ask anything of us and it shall be yours. Our technology, our worlds, our resources, anything to appease your terrifying race. Kian, who had been trying to find a decent pizza delivery service that could deliver to a diplomatic shuttle, looked up from his tablet, distracted. Yeah, that's great, he said, waving a hand dismissively at the legendary weapon. A bit gaudy for my taste. Look, I'm trying to order a pepperoni and mushroom for when I get home, and I have a quick material science question you guys can probably answer. The ambassador, utterly bewildered, could only nod. Of course. We have the most advanced material science in the galaxy. Excellent, Kian said, his eyes lighting up with genuine interest for the first time all day. I need you to invent a material for a small, three-legged table that goes in the middle of the pizza box. He began to pace, now fully engaged. It needs to be lightweight, obviously. Food safe, heat-resistant up to at least 200 degrees Celsius to handle molten cheese. And most importantly, it needs the structural integrity to prevent the box lid from sagging and touching the toppings, even under extreme G-forces, like, say, a delivery drone making a sharp turn. It's a real sticking point for me. Can you do that? The Vorlag ambassador stared at him. He stared at the human who had toppled his empire not with a weapon, but with a ball bearing and a deep-seated frustration with shoddy product design. He stared as the full, mind-breaking horror of the situation finally dawned on him. He wasn't looking at a conqueror. He was looking at his new and infinitely more demanding boss. And all he could think about was the paperwork.